I'm not perfect, God, neither are you. Tell these salty motherfuckers to tell the truth. Tell politicians to give up the rooms. Tell silent voters to stand up to the booth.
God, it's me. Can you hear my plea? Feeling like I'm lost in this world, can't you see? Demons creeping in, trying to take control of me. But I'm just trying to find the light, trying to break free. I'm not perfect, God, neither are you. But why you keep forgetting me? What did I do? Trying to have a convo, but you starting to preach. Feeling like I'm on a leash. Can't find no peace, find no peace. Living in hell, can't you hear my plea? I'm suffocating, can't you see? Why you let these false prophets roam free? While the will run suffer, can't you see? I'm not perfect, God, neither are you. Why you keep targeting me? What did I do? Trying to have a convo, but you starting to preach. Feel like I'm on a leash, can't find no peace.
Hardest battles, strongest soldiers, greatest burden, broadest shoulders, pushing up just like these boulders. This conflict like it's water, so this mercy, take my chalice, seeking grace through all this malice. All of these salty motherfuckers could give up.
Politics and sinners, they all the same. Got me stuck in this endless game. But I won't give up, won't play the role. Gotta do what's best
for my soul.
I'm not perfect, God. Neither are you. Tell these salty motherfuckers to tell the truth. Tell these politicians to give up the room. Tell silent voters to stand up to the booth. Living wild but truthfully free. God keep on watching over me. Take my pleas and keep the receipts. I just want all of humanity.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. It's Monday. You know what I'm saying? And you are tuned in to the Urban Conservative. This is buried truths, broken promises, scandals, delays, and the fight for justice. But before we get into all that, we get into independent music, and I am going to get into Don Tripp, Underwater. So with that being said, we are going to play that, and I will be right back right after this.
Yeah. Feel like no matter how far I go, I ain't made it far enough. Emotions gon' overflow if I keep them bottled up. Dog eat dog world, try not to get gobbled up. My kids think I'm made of steel, I'm trying not to rush. I teach my babies, end of the day, all we got is us. What good is a harder goal if you don't know who not to trust? The money kept multiplying and niggas kept popping up. They all wanna see me back in the hole like I'm Shia LaBeouf. Come try your luck, push me and see if I budge. I was in need of assistance, I went and got me a plug. I took a leap of faith and believed in my digit scale. Where I come from is eye for an eye till we read in braille. Difficult moving forward, but that's better than backtracking. Gotta watch your back, the people behind you might be backstabbers. Nigga trade on me, just know that ain't no coming back after. Cause I'm the one to blame if I let that happen. Yeah, they say that pain is just fear leaving the body. I can heal myself, I feel I don't need anybody. I've been through the ringer, left with nobody to call on. I've been through hell and back so many times, it's where I call home. I learned to weather the storm and keep it quiet. You'll never see my troubles, I'd rather suffer in silence. Bet your bottom dollar I'm never running or hiding. I bumped into Kelly Rowland, she told me I'm a survivor. I'm known for making something from nothing, baby MacGyver. If life's a box of chocolate, I better make mine Godiva. You know the best. I'm Superman in the flesh. I put my all in this game without ever pressing reset. I'm still standing, I'm planted firm. I learned the harder way to value every penny I earned. And for every penny I lost, just know a lesson was taught. Growing up wasn't quite as easy as we thought. Long live Bill. Just know a lesson was taught. Growing up wasn't quite as easy as we thought. Long live Bill.
Long live Piff. Hey, that was Don Water. My bad, Don Trip Underwater. Man, let's get into it though. It's gonna be a hell of a Monday morning, but something that we need to have a discussion on because just sitting here and having discussions online about different things, when it comes to either Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, my conversations are very very, very different. And I'm starting to notice that people are watching, certain things when it comes to Doge and them closing certain departments down and certain offices. And it's like, yo, they're doing this, they're doing that. And I understand it. A lot of people are mad, but a lot of people should have been paying attention because he was talking about this last year. The things that, the Department of Education, the BA, doing the DEI, getting rid of the trans, everybody knew this was coming. But honestly, I believe that people were so used to voting and hearing from people like, oh, he's not going to do that. They're not going to do that. But they actually did do that. You know what I'm saying? So it's, a lot of people feel like they got bamboozled in their vote. But did you really? Because I honestly feel like this is what you voted for. You may not have came out and said it, but this is what you voted for. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I get it that people are frustrated. They're like, man, I don't get it. Well, there was a time that, people should have called it out. And I want to talk about the KKK, right? And the truth about it is because even though they want to tell us that it's in the past, it's in the history, we just need to move on. It's not always like that. And it should never be like that, because if we don't learn from the past, especially our past mistakes, how do we move forward? If we never learned and corrected those wrongs and we just buried them to move forward, we can't. We got to stop doing that. So I want to get into this documentary, and it's the truth about the KKK, the forgotten history.
The Ku Klux Klan, or KKK, is deeply rooted in the post-Civil War history of the United States. They are three of the most familiar words and letters in almost any language, synonymous with hatred, intimidation, and murder. What were the origins of the KKK? Why was it created, and by who? What have prominent historians stated about the rise and fall of the KKK? How did it evolve, and what did that change become? How deeply was the Klan embedded into business, society, and even national politics? Hello, I'm Colin Heaton, former soldier, Marine Corps Scout Sniper, history professor, historian, and book author. And we will answer these questions and other issues on this segment of Forgotten History.
Why is Amazon paying me $63,000 a month? Well, I didn't make this kind of money.
The Klan had three evolutions in its history as it evolved and altered its methods, tactics, and expanded its focus. All three movements have called for the purification of American society, and all are considered far-right extremist organizations. During each period of the Klan's existence, the official membership was secret, and estimates of the total numbers of members was unknown, and they were highly exaggerated by both friends and enemies alike. The first Klan was founded in Pulaski, Tennessee, on December 24, 1865, by 6 former officers of the Confederate Army. They were Frank McCord, Richard Reed, John Lester, John Kennedy, J. Calvin Jones, and James Crow. It started innocuously as a fraternal social club inspired at least in part by the then largely defunct Sons of Malta, perceived as an offshoot combined of the old Knights Templar and Teutonic Knights. The KKK adopted many of the initiation rites and formal ceremonies of those previous organizations with the same purpose of fraternity, solidarity, and most of all, political power, which today in hindsight is laughable as well as tragic. The official KKK manual describing these rituals was printed by Laps D. McCord of Pulaski, Tennessee. The Klan also needed a distinguishing uniform, which later in their history would become notorious, robes, and hence their adopting the Spanish capirote hood. Former Confederate Brigadier General George Gordon, for whom Fort Gordon, Georgia was named for, developed the prescript, which supported the superiority of white society and culture and adopted and taught white supremacist beliefs. They created the ranking system, and at the top of the KKK was the Imperial Wizard, or the National President. Below this were the Grand Dragons, who governed an individual state, called a realm. Then there were the Grand Magis, or Deputy Commanders, and then the Grand Cyclops, responsible under the Grand Dragons for establishing and maintaining recruitment standards. Below them were the Kleagles, who were managed and who were responsible for recruiting and vetting of new members. The rest of the members were the Klansmen, or the foot soldiers, and enforcers. Confederate General Nathan Bedford Forrest was elected the first Imperial Wizard, and stated that he was the Klan's national leader. Forrest was very concerned about the Republican influence growing among the blacks in the South. Despite its apparently well-structured appearance, the Klan had no membership rosters, no named chapters, and no listed local officers, so it was difficult to judge its membership. Due to the heavy response by President Andrew Johnson and the increasing numbers of federal soldiers into the southern states as a result, Forrest called for the Klan to disband in 1869. He stated that it was being perverted from its original honorable and patriotic purposes, becoming injurious instead of subservient to the public peace. Historian Stanley Horn argues that, generally speaking, the Klan's end was more in the form of spotty, slow, and gradual disintegration than a formal and decisive disbandment. Despite Gordon's and Forrest's work, local Klan units never accepted the prescript and continued to operate independently without any form of command and control. Historian George C. Rabel argues that the Klan declined in strength in part because of internal weaknesses, its lack of central organization, and the failure of its leaders to control criminal elements and sadists. More fundamentally, it declined because it failed to achieve its central objective, the overthrow of Republican state governments in the South. Historian Elaine France Parsons describes the membership, quote, "Lifting the Klan mask revealed a chaotic multitude of anti-black vigilante groups, disgruntled poor white farmers, wartime guerrilla bands, displaced Democratic politicians, illegal whiskey distillers, coercive moral reformers, sadists, rapists, white workmen fearful of black competition, employers trying to enforce labor discipline, common thieves, neighbors with decades-old grudges, and even a few freedmen and white Republicans who allied with Democratic whites or had criminal agendas of their own. Indeed, all they had in common, besides being overwhelmingly white, Southern, and Democratic, was that they called themselves, or were called, Klansmen."
I dare you to let me build you a completely free e-commerce store.
That's crazy. That's crazy as hell.
In effect, the Klan was a military force serving the interests of the Democratic Party, the planter class, and all those who desired restoration of white supremacy. Its purposes were political, but political in the broadest sense, for it sought to affect power relations, both public and private, throughout Southern society. It aimed to reverse the interlocking changes sweeping over the South during Reconstruction, to destroy the Republican Party's infrastructure, undermine the Reconstruction state, reestablish control of the black labor force, and restore racial subordination in every aspect of Southern life. To that end, they worked to curb the education, economic advancement, voting rights, and right to keep and bear arms of black people. The Klan soon spread into nearly every Southern state, launching a reign of terror against Republican leaders, both black and white. Those political leaders assassinated during the campaign included Arkansas Congressman James M. Hines, 3 members of the South Carolina legislature, and several men who served in constitutional conventions. The Klan primarily focused upon suppressing black voters, and a political campaign often turned deadly. More than 2,000 people were killed, wounded, or otherwise injured in Louisiana in the few weeks leading up to the presidential election of November 1868. One example was in St. Landry Parish, which had a registered Republican majority of 1,071. The Klan's efforts proved effective because after the murders, no Republicans voted in the fall elections. White Democrats cast the full vote of the parish for General Ulysses S. Grant's opponent, Democrat Horatio Seymour. The KKK also killed and wounded more than 200 black Republicans hunting and chasing them down. In the governor's race in Columbia County, Georgia, 1,222 votes were cast for Republican Rufus Bullock, so the Klan got involved. By the November presidential election, the Klan's intimidation suppressed the Republican vote, and only one person voted for Grant. As a result, the 1871 Civil Rights Act allowed the president to suspend habeas corpus. This means that the traditional right to be brought before a court or a judge to appeal for bail or challenge an unlawful detention could be suspended, and was in fact suspended by Lincoln during the Civil War. During this period, the Florida Freedmen's Bureau records provided a detailed recounting of Klansmen's beatings and murders of freedmen and their white allies, numbering 150 dead in voting intimidations. As a result of these actions, in 1870 and 1871, the federal government passed the Enforcement Acts, which were intended to investigate and prosecute Klan crimes. While racism was a core belief of the Klan, initially anti-Semitism was not. Many prominent Southern Jews identified wholly with...
That's a lot of people. That's a lot. Some with masks and then some without it. But there's a... Oh, damn, is that people hanging in the back? Wow. I wouldn't doubt it, though. There's probably people hanging, too. That's crazy. That's what it looks like. That's wild.
Southern culture, resulting in examples of Jewish participation in the Klan until they too were included as targets. The second era of the Klan started in 1915 as a small group in Stone Mountain, Georgia. It expanded membership.
You know what's crazy? I don't mean to laugh because I know this is like a part of history or whatever, and it's like it has so much to do with today. But the way that they were wearing these. Does anybody remember growing up and, for Halloween and your mom would give you as a sheet and you'd have to dress up as a ghost? That's what like this shit looked like. And then it's like, I don't fucking get that, because I remember a time where, people in my neighborhood were dressing up as ghosts and just white sheets, because that's pretty much all we could afford on Halloween. And that's crazy just to see that these people would dress up in sheets and scare black people. That's just wild to me. I mean, and not maybe just black people, but people that stood up for black people, stood up for equal rights, stood up for equality and equity for all. So
nationwide in the early and mid-1920s, including urban areas of the Midwest and West, with Kansas being a large Klan stronghold. The various independent Klan organizations often took a position of supporting prohibition and compulsory public education for white children, although blacks were not to be educated if possible, and if they were, only in segregated schools. The Klan received its greatest propaganda boost of its entire history when film director D.W. Griffith released his 1915 silent film, The Birth of a Nation, which took great liberties with the truth surrounding the creation and activities of the first Klan. This was when the Klan was resurrected by William Joseph Simmons in Georgia due to the popularity of the film. Simmons relied on the original founding documents from the original Klan and collected the stories, relying upon the memories of some surviving elders. When the film was shown in Atlanta in December of 1915, Simmons and his new Klansmen paraded to the theater in their robes and pointed hoods, even riding on robed horses, imitating those scenes in the film. In the film, the Klan was represented as white knights of the nation's conscience, protecting white virtue and white women from the ravaging sexually aggressive Negro. The public response was very positive as a result, but the film did not mention lynching.
You know what's crazy as hell to me? And that shows you how dumb America is, because what about these, the white knights, right? The Knights of Columbus. Like, we don't have those in our fucking neighborhoods, in our communities. Like, there isn't, that makes me really like wonder, like, how much do people really care about equality? Because you don't see them fighting for it. You see them more fighting for agendas for their political parties and not for their constituents. That's what I can definitely say. Because listening to that House and Ways meeting, and I'll probably get into that tomorrow. This shit, because, you know, the Fraud and Oversight Committee is at 10:15 this morning too. So I'll definitely probably have some from Ways and Means, because they had a very good conversation this morning. And people, to me, aren't listening. I don't really believe that, you know, people were paying attention. And are they going after what people care about? Because we hear about this waste and our fraud, right? And we understand why a lot of jobs are being eradicated, abolished. You know, people are getting fired. That's what we'll just call it that, right? But I honestly believe in my eyes is that people were not paying attention. People weren't paying attention to what was going on in the world. You know, they didn't understand that a lot of their wages were depending on grants that were coming in, you know, from the state and, you know, federal or city, you know what I'm saying? So it's things like that. But now that it affected a lot of people, because, you know, especially with getting rid of the Department of Education, that just leaves it up to the states. Do y'all really want, you know, all this? And I understand it. You know, I heard people talking about, oh, they'll just use it for school vouchers and, you know, things like that. And it's like, listen, man, I thought that the ideal of this and the vision behind it was to better the education for our children. So why aren't they fighting for that? And I understand, is it like leaving the systems in play, opening the door for them to do things like this? Because I will tell you like this, right? Growing up, and, you know, you see these, they're dressed in sheets. And then we used to dress up as ghosts in sheets, you know, for Halloween. And it's like, damn, do we really not really understand what we are facing as people? What our ancestors have faced? Because I will tell you like this, if you are out of sight, you are out of mind.
Lynchings, other murders, and voter intimidation. Within the first 6 months of the association's national recruitment campaign, Klan membership had increased by 85,000 by 1920. By the mid-1920s, the organization's membership ranged from 3 to 8 million members. The Klan also began to become deeply involved in politics, even more so than in the 1860s to 1870s, as they knew that they needed pro-Klan Democratic members in state and federal government to block Republican actions targeting their organization. They needed politicians who would support Jim Crow laws and keep the federal government out of their business. They were described as being the acting military arm of the Democratic Party and were attributed with helping white Democrats regain control of state legislatures throughout the South through voter intimidation and ridiculous literacy and cognitive tests against black voters. In 1923, Simmons was ousted as leader of the KKK by Hiram Wesley Evans. From September 1923, there were two Klan organizations, the one founded by Simmons and led by Evans in the southern United States, and a separate group led by Grand Dragon D.C. Stevenson based in Indiana, with its membership primarily in the Midwestern United States. However, despite their rather successful advances into the political arena, public opinion was against the Klan, and membership rapidly declined in the latter half of the 1920s. Infighting from various Klan groups, as well as federal law enforcement opposition, brought about a collapse in the membership of both groups. Membership had dropped to about 30,000 by 1930, and finally faded away in the 1940s. The third incarnation of the Klan was resurrected in the early 1950s in the form of localized and isolated groups that used the KKK brand name locally but had no connected affiliation. They opposed the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s, such as when they fought against Brown versus Board of Education and imposed separate but equal as their justification. During this period, they often infiltrated Southern police departments, schools, and governor's offices, such as George Wallace of Alabama.
Damn.
Several members of the Klan groups had beaten the Freedom Riders in 1961, murdered civil rights workers, such as Medgar Evers, like Klansman Byron Della Beckwith in 1963.
You want to talk about him?
Some were convicted of murder in the deaths of civil rights workers in Mississippi in 1964, and of children in the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama in 1963, and killing Viola Liuzzi in 1965. These activities saw the KKK classified as a hate group by the Anti-Defamation League and the Southern Poverty Law Center. The final demise of the original Klan arrived in the form of a senseless murder.
See this property on Craigslist for $4,300 a month? Well, it's been sitting.
That's crazy. But we're going to get into that. Michael McDonald.
Michael Donald in 1981, and a trial that made history in Alabama. In 1987, the Klan was successfully sued in federal court in a historic $7 million verdict against the men involved in the lynching of Donald. But Robert K. Byrd, the Democratic leader and longtime senator, was a Klan recruiter in the 1940s. He described the organization as a group of upstanding people, doctors, lawyers, clergy, judges, who he thought could provide an outlet for his talents and ambitions, and also supported his opposition to communism. Byrd claimed to have left the KKK in 1946, but encouraged by the Grand Dragon of his KKK branch, and with Klan money, Byrd ran on the Democratic ticket for both state and federal offices. The Klan funded him throughout his career. Byrd opposed Brown versus Board of Education, supported Jim Crow laws, and separate but equal racial laws. He joined James Strom Thurmond Sr., who also helped him in opposing racial equality laws. Also opposed the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and ran with Klan money. Byrd called civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr. as a self-seeking rabble-rouser. Both Hillary Clinton and Joseph Biden proudly proclaimed Senator Robert K. Byrd
to be their mentor. Get the fuck out of here. Wow.
Buildings still carry Byrd's name in exaltation.
Doesn't even surprise
the United States
me.
government still considers the Klan to be a subversive terrorist organization. Currently, the Anti-Defamation League puts total KKK membership nationwide at around 3,000, while the Southern Poverty Law Center claims 6,000 members in total. The Ku Klux Klan became notoriously immortalized by its actions, origins, and total creation by the Democratic Party, which supported and funded Klan activities to include political and criminal enterprises. Remember this when you hear people claim that Republicans are fascists. The Republicans were hated and targeted by the Klan, and for good reason.
We hope you enjoyed this segment of Forgotten History.
please click like and subscribe for free.
Wow. So please do not forget that Republicans were hated once too. Oh, shit, I'm done. Man, oh man, oh man. We got a long way to go, people. We got a long way to go. Because, you know, that's the one thing is that when you hear in this video, it was majorly about the Democratic Party and how, you know, Republicans were fighting during the Reconstruction era to free blacks, you know, for us to have equal rights. And it's just crazy as hell to hear all this shit. You know, when Biden, you know, his mentor was Byrd, and it's like, no wonder why that nigga's crime bill was like that. You know, but then I got to look at too, is like back in the 80s. You know, there was a lot of cause and effect. And I got to understand that is like, how are they going to respond? You know, when I look back, and that's where the crazy thing, and one thing that I want to get into, right, is over the weekend, I found out about a case that was, I was young as hell. I was born in 1977. And I heard about James Rudd. I found about James Rudd. And it shocked me is because it's like, damn, how come nobody ever wants to talk about, you know, the shit that goes on in history? The shit, because it's still matter. Because I'll tell you like this, right? You had over 24 people that were charged, and they were charged with molesting 37 children, including their own. And it's like, this whole story, and I think it blew a lot of people's mind, actually, whoever has seen the story. And it's like, damn, like, when are we going to care about kids? You know, we say we care about kids, but when are we going to care about kids? And I continue, I'm going to keep on asking this question, is when are we actually going to care about kids? So I want you to watch this video, and it's about exposing a pedophile ring in Jordan, Minnesota. And it's back in the 1980s. They were a satanic crew. And it's just wild that we had these like in so many communities throughout the state of Minnesota. And people really didn't want to talk about it. It was more swept under the rugs when it came to cartels being up here because, you know, you got to think about Princeton, Minnesota. This is around the same time, the same era as the Miami to the north. And now they exposed a pedophile satanic ring in Jordan, Minnesota, which are both basically the same distance either way, away from the cities. So
the pedophile ring that was uncovered in Jordan, Minnesota today sent shockwaves across America, and in total over a dozen locals have been arrested so far, including local mothers and police officers. Nobody in this small town of approximately 2,700 wanted to believe that this was possible, that their neighbors next door, the friendly couple with kids of their own, could be accused of worshiping the devil during late-night rituals and mechanically molesting children. But this is the reality now of life here in Jordan, Minnesota, where over a dozen local adults have been arrested by local authorities on suspicion that they were involved in an occult-influenced pedophile ring that recruited and used local children to feed their darkest desires and sickest pleasures.
Bless up.
No one wants to believe that evil could potentially touch their hometown. Nobody wants to imagine a world where their friends, neighbors, and even family members could conspire together to harm children in their own backyard. But unfortunately, and tragically, these dark thoughts became an even darker reality in the town of Jordan, Minnesota, in the year 1983. To this very day, local and national authorities refuse to admit that an occult-influenced group of local adults were working with criminals in the small town of Jordan, Minnesota, to pimp out and molest children from the area. But sometimes, reality is stranger than fiction. The story of the Jordan, Minnesota child abuse ring is one of the most disturbing ever told, and it was completely covered up by the United States government. Join us today as we expose these secrets that have remained hidden for over 40 years and investigate claims of murder, child abuse, and Satanism in the small town of Jordan, Minnesota.
The devil in Jordan. Oh, that's coming on tonight. Damn, I didn't even know. Oh, damn, I'm watching that tonight. Damn, that's crazy. I didn't even know that was something that was coming on in the future. So that's coming on whenever oh, that's tonight. I'll definitely be watching the Paranormal Files. Damn, that's crazy because there was a lot of shit that went on with that story, and I wanted to talk about. So there was a lot of reports that were done on. There's somebody actually that's still going through this process. His name is James Rudd, right? And I want to say that, I want to get into this a little bit. Right now, I don't want to read the whole thing, but America's story is no stranger to panics, hysteria, or more charitability, frantic overreaction and rush to judgment. Our history is replete with examples, beginning with the Salem witchcraft trials, but also including the Great Awakenings, religious revivalism in the 18th and 19th centuries, and continuing on throughout two Red Scares, following World Wars I and II. More recently, mass overreaction has overblown the likelihood of Muslim terrorist attack and fear that the Russians are coming again. For a time in the 1980s, some 35 years ago now, such alarm focused on the widespread ritualized sex abuse of young children, often by preschool, daycare, and babysitter workers. The phenomenon manifested itself under different circumstances with a varying cast of characters in California, Washington, New Jersey, North Carolina, Florida, Texas, Ohio, and elsewhere, including in one very prominent case, Jordan, Scott County, Minnesota. Nationally, approximately 200 persons were charged and about 80 convicted and given long sentences. The entire saga has recently and masterfully been re-examined by Richard Beck, and We Believe the Children, A Moral Panic in the 1980s. In this book, Beck skillfully weaves the events of the case of key cases of the 1980s and brings to bear psychology, psychiatry, sociology, and social and political history to help us understand it all. Before understanding Beck's work in greater detail, and the Jordan case in particular, let's be clear about a few things. From long before the 1980s and continuing to right now, child abuse in America, whether physical, emotional, or sexual, has been real and appalling. Most often, that abuse occurs within families. Beyond the family, it is frequently sexual and involves adult perpetrators in a trusted role: priest, pastor, scout leader, coach, physician, teacher. In the past 20 years or so, we've seen hundreds of instances with new accusations coming to light regularly. For a long while, until the 1980s sexual abuse hysteria, many, if not most cases of pedophilia abuse were dealt with quietly. In my own research, for a book set in Red Wing, Minnesota, for example, I found that a local theater owner, when he learned that his manager was a molester, contacted police. The result was gentlemanly agreement for the offender to simply quit his job and the town, sending an offending priest on to another parish, quietly dismissing his scout leader, or keeping one's mouth shut at more than one Big Ten university, are similar sweep under the rug responses. In our current century, many of the charges of abuse have been made by adults years after the abuse is said to have occurred. These are not, in the main, charges made by parents on behalf of children. And as adults, those who were abused as children remember the events quite vividly. Importantly, that they did not come forward previously has not been a lack of memory. Rather, has been a variety of reasons. They did not realize at the time that the behavior of a respected authority adult figure was wrong. They knew or eventually recognized the behavior for what it was, but felt ashamed or a sense of personal guilt. They were terrified. They felt that going public would disgrace them or their family. The many cases nationwide in the 1980s differed in important respects. Primarily, the evidence of sexual abuse depended on the testimony of very young children, quite often preschoolers. And the memories of those crimes did not come readily to the children's mind. They were based most often upon the recall of repressed or recovered memories, which came to light only after intense and highly suspect interrogation. And we believe the children, Richard Beck begins with, focuses on the finishes with the McMartin case in Manhattan Beach, California. The other cases were nicely woven to the story, the issue, the explanations, and the chronology. We'll get into the Jordan case, importantly, as it is shortly. But Beck, in my view, is entirely correct in focusing on McMartin. All the cases shared similar elements, but McMartin had them all. The case began in September 1983 when a parent of a preschooler who, as it turned out, had complex issues and agendas of her own, discovered what she suspected were signs of anal abuse to her toddler son. Police were notified, and later discredited medical expert confirmed suspicions. Confirmed suspicions. Owners of the McMartin preschool were arrested. Subsequent arrest of most of the staff followed. At the center of the charges was the husband, the school's founder. At the center of the charges was the husband of the school's founder's daughter. The primary evidence against him included prominently his penance for wearing knee-length surfer shorts, as it was a beach community without underwear. The community of largely middle-class families became outraged and convinced of guilt. At one point, the school was nearly destroyed by arsonists. A woman suspect credentials began to interrogate children over and over again. Techniques included telling children that other children had already confirmed facts when no such thing had happened. That woman was later revealed to have had sexual affair with a local TV reporter who had encouraged a sensationalized community rush to judgment. There was prosecutorial excess and careerism gone wild. Not only was child abuse charged, though there were accusations based on the testimony of toddlers, of children having been flown to Palm Springs for ritual abuse, and that such rituals occurred in a local Episcopal church. In the end, McMartin resulted in the largest criminal trial in U.S. history. Most of those charges were dismissed. The final defendant, the young man who didn't always wear underwear, was acquitted. But the results, they were in California and U.S. law were profound. Reputations were ruined, livelihoods destroyed, and life savings due to legal fees obliterated. Jordan. So let's talk about Jordan, Minnesota for a little bit. Jordan, Minnesota, which is located along U.S. Highway 169 in Scott County, between Shakopee and St. Peter. In 1983, its population was just 2,700. It was described by residents and visiting journalists alike as typical small town America. It was and is white European, largely of German origin, and Christian. Already in 1983, some local residents were mindful of the fact that Jordan was becoming ex-urban as it attracted residents from the Twin Cities. Some of these newcomers lived in the Valley Green Trailer Park, which was separated from the main part of the town by Highway 169. It was, in a sense, on the other side of the tracks. The Jordan sex abuse case began in September 1983 in a rather ordinary way. A 25-year-old woman, Christine Brown, told the Jordan police that her children had been abused by a neighbor, James Rudd. Both the victims and the accused lived in the Valley Green Trailer Park. Police investigated and quickly discovered that Rudd, who worked as a trash collector, had 2 prior child sex convictions. The police investigation, which Beck describes as conducted with caution and skill, and had within a few weeks compiled enough evidence to secure conviction. In essence, Rudd had established a friendship with neighbors and convinced parents to hire him, as a babysitter, who on some occasions had children spend the night in his home. The questioning the victims seemed to be straightforward, and most of the information was corroborated by Rudd. Disturbingly, police learned that in at least one case, a child's mother knew of Rudd's abuse but did nothing. That parent and one other were also arrested. In early November, the Scott County prosecutor, Kathleen Morris, entered the case. After graduation from Southern Illinois University, Morris taught high school for a while and then came to Minnesota to attend Hamline University Law School. By 1978, she had become an assistant county attorney. In 1981, attracted statewide attention when she prosecuted 6 members of the Cermak family for sexually abusing their own and other children. The 2 adult males in the family each received 40-year prison sentences, although after the trial, Morris claimed that her primary aim was to gain physiological treatment for both the abusers and their victims. She was also quoted as saying of the Cermaks that she would just put a sign on their houses that says, "Perverts live here." Morris at the time attracted attention as a woman, and because of her furious advocacy for crime victims, especially child victims of sexual abuse. As a result, she was thought to be a rising political star who would run for Minnesota Attorney General. Oh, we're just finding this all political again, huh? When Morris entered the case, the police had already expanded their investigation and had begun using some of the same coercive interview techniques that marked both the McMartin and other prominent cases. As a result, they soon arrested 5 more adults, including 2 residents of the Valley Green Trailer Park. Of those, one was the woman who had first made the allegations against Rudd. The police chief, Alvin Erickson, told the press that the thing went back 2 years, and the Minneapolis Tribune reported that the Jordan case was the biggest sex ring in state history. Police said they believed that Rudd and his accomplices had abused at least 30 children, and that they were conducting interviews in nearby towns in an effort to identify additional victims. Although most child sexual abuse as well as rape occurs within families or within persons closely associated with the family, Americans in large numbers believed then as now that such crimes are most often committed by strangers, old men in trench coats who hang around playgrounds. What is more, when she compared the Rudd case to the Cermak family, Kathleen Morris encouraged the community's willingness to blame outsiders. The remedy, as some residents expressed in letters to the local newspaper, was to strengthen family and community life to protect against sexual abusers and pornography producers who would otherwise eat their way right through our communities. In addition, in the case of James Rudd in the Valley Green Trailer Park, there was class consciousness as well as wariness of outsiders. Beginning in January 1984, were arrests made outside the trailer park of people who were apparently not connected to James Rudd. The first of those two were Robert and Louise Bentz, who were charged with child abuse. Next, in February, came the arrest of Greg Myers, a Jordan police officer, and his wife, Jane. They were similarly charged with child abuse, and their 3 children were removed from the home. In June came the arrest of Donald Buchan, a Scott County deputy sheriff, and his wife. And all by the early of summer of 1984, there were 24 arrests. What's more, as the arrests mounted, as in the McMartin case, the fidelity of children interviews with therapists, investigators, and prosecutors was not challenged. Later, accounts from the children interviewed confirmed that they were hounded until they recounted what the interviewers wanted, hoped, or expected to hear. I was sick of being badgered, Greg Myers' son, who was 11 at the time, later said. I figured I might as well make it a little more tolerable for myself, among other things. Myers' son claimed his parents held orgies in the woods, as in California, under extreme pressure from detectives, prosecutors, and therapists. Children's accounts soon became outrageous. One described black limousines and pornographic films. Another one of the defendants forced her to eat the intestines of a squirrel, a fox, and her pet gerbil, and a cat that was eaten, fur and all. Other children said they had seen children murdered with their bodies thrown into trucks and driven away. Damn. But despite the extreme unlikelihood that such shocking events had occurred, a number of therapists and detectives maintained faith and truthfulness of the children's account, including those of ritual murder. One of the therapists was Susan Pips Yanis, who at the time could not understand why the Scott County Sheriff deputies were not out and forced to find bodies and other physical evidence. Indeed, in Minnesota, as in California, a major problem for prosecutors was the lack of corroborating evidence. In Scott County, that problem was seemingly solved when James Rudd, the main defendant, came forward to describe the myriad sexual parties he had attended over the previous 2 years, and identified the adult participants and the children they brought with them. In exchange for that information and agreement to testify against others, Prosecutor Morris dismissed 98 of 108 charges against Rudd, who then pled guilty to the other 10 charges. Morris was pleased. I think so many would like to believe children would lie, and now we have an adult saying they didn't lie at all. Over a period of 4 days, James Rudd described in florid detail sexual encounters that included himself and trailer park mothers and their young children, as well as rendezvous that even included Rudd's parents. This motherfucker's sick, man. I can't wait to watch that shit tonight. I'm really going to get into that. But that's wild. That's wild as hell. Right? Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm gonna get some of these comments. I guess these are the only ones. Yeah, it's wild as hell. I mean, especially when you go back into time, or I won't even say time, but back in history, and you see situations like, Casey Ramirez and how the cartels were up here and paid for so much of things that were going on politically. So I was like, yeah, when you go more into history, you see that, Hubert H. Humphrey, or you see other political figures gained off of that fact, and a lot of it was either bullshit, sensationalized, or wasn't even true, and people profited off that. And that's sad to me, because did we ever see justice? And I don't believe, I know for a fact that Rudd just 2 years ago was going through court, and he was committed to the MSOP. I don't know how really much that case really turned out, other than, and like I said, I'm going to do some more digging on that too. And that's just wild to me, is that more people weren't. A lot of this just, I don't know, maybe it's just because social media nowadays. Because I just seen that it pulled up on my FYP on TikTok, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? Jordan, Minnesota. But then I heard about the sexual abuse, but I had never seen it for myself. You know, I was always, you know, maybe read or, you know, seen different things about talking about it. Even when I came across my, you know, Casey Ramirez in Princeton, Minnesota, there was a lot of things that came out in different, you know, interviews, or even in the book, it was way more detail than maybe what was actually going on. So with that being said, I want to get into George Floyd Square in the battlefield of delays and broken promises. So with that being said, let's get into that.
We have an update to breaking news that we told you about at 9 o'clock tonight. Bloomington police had been looking for a suspect who had driven off with 2 little girls. Those girls have been found safe.
1.5-year-old twins, Adeline and Serenity Tenna, they were taken from their mother near the Mall of America earlier today. Again, the update is, we called for the public's help about 15 minutes ago. The update is the girls have now been found safe. So we have good news to report on those 2 missing little girls. Nearly 5 years later, plans are still up in the air about the future of George Floyd Square near 38th and Chicago in Minneapolis.
Many on the Minneapolis City Council would like to develop a pedestrian mall, while Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey is seeking a more open road concept. Simone Woolridge takes a closer look at the conflict and the search for a solution.
No black person told you to do that. If they did, they don't live. I live there. And you telling me that we telling you what we don't want that the way you're doing it. I live there. You don't live there.
Nearly 5 years after the murder of George Floyd, there is still no clear plan as to what 38th and Chicago will look like. This has sort of been like a game of tic-tac-toe that we have been watching year after year. The X's here represent the city's council, marking their plan pushing for a pedestrian mall. The O's represents the city's mayor and some people in the community who don't like that idea, so they decide to block it. And just when we think one letter has found a resolution enough to end this game, it's a stalemate. And here we are again, once again today, ready to end that game. A sigh.
It's really painful for me.
Might be one of the only things shared when you put the Minneapolis City Council and the Minneapolis mayor in one room to talk about George Floyd Square.
They put out a vision, and today 9 of you said no to that vision.
A vision not all can see.
We've already been damaged enough in our community.
9 out of 13 council members.
Councilmember Osman. Aye.
Decided to override Mayor Jacob Frey's veto he made on February 19th.
Councilmember Chavez.
Aye. And pauses plans for a flexible street option, allowing access for transit, emergency vehicles, and businesses.
We reduced George Floyd's murder to street infrastructure. Let's run buses and cars across the very place where George Floyd was killed. And that, for me, is a signal of erasure.
The council doubling down on delaying that project in order to explore a pedestrian mall instead.
It's white supremacy working at its finest. And that, for me, was enough to come in and say, no, we'll find a different path.
To say that, it doesn't make sense. It ignores what the community themselves have asked for, including black community members, black business owners.
So to digest what has happened and where a lot of this frustration is coming from, I reviewed hours of city council meetings and talk with people who live near 38th in Chicago, including council member Andrea Jenkins.
To this day, I'm still like, why am I still doing this?
Why are you?
I love my community. I love black people. I think we deserve to have a beautiful community. I think we deserve to have a memorial that not only honors the life of George Floyd, but all the people who have been, whose lives have been cut short.
This week, Councilmember Jenkins announced she will not seek a fourth term.
The first day I got into office, I wrote on my whiteboard, create a center for racial healing.
Her decision to not run again means she will likely no longer be on city council when a decision is made.
For the broader community, we need to reopen the intersection at 38th in Chicago.
37 years.
That's how long Michael Kehoe has lived near the intersection. It's the same area where he protested for justice in 2020. Why'd you feel the need to go?
To recognize the injustice that was done en masse with other people,
And those moments stuck with Michael.
This is my George Floyd pile of stuff.
Enough to keep track of them.
I keep thinking it's going to end, and it doesn't end.
In his office, you'll find letters written to city council. He's been to over 70 meetings, and his frustration stems from data he volunteered to be a part of, collected for the city.
70% of the respondents want the streets opened up.
Kira, the Center for Urban and Regional Affairs, partnered with the Community Co-Creation Team, or CCT, to conduct a survey about what people living near George Floyd Square think the area should look like. And it showed a majority prefers an open plan.
The Cura survey results are the community.
It is our responsibility to demonstrate leadership and make unpopular decisions when the data leads us to these decisions.
But other council members disagree, saying in this letter, George Floyd Square is not any other street in the city. The council's move is supported by community members who, for nearly 5 years, have been cultivating and reimagining the space in a way that centers ongoing calls for justice. So where does this leave us now? Well, for the city, it means
the motion to postpone to December 11th the consideration of the George Floyd Square pedestrian mall.
But for some of the people who live and work near George Floyd Square,
This is our livelihood. This is our community. This is how we feed our kids. And so when you have a couple council members playing around with our lives and our community,
literally our lives,
it means something to us.
Yet another delay means disappointment.
Y'all seem to talk about all this politics stuff, but the small business is getting hurt.
Reporting in Minneapolis, Simone Woolridge.
Because you got the power. You got the power over some people.
Fox 9.
We used to that. And we're not going to stop fighting.
And the city of Minneapolis is also looking for more community input to redevelop the People's Way site at George Floyd Square.
This is where a gas station used to be. This weekend, the public was invited to meet members of 4 nonprofit organizations that applied to be a community owner with plans for the site. Last week, those organizations presented their plans. On Tuesday, you'll have another opportunity to meet with the organizations from 3 to 6 p.m. at Powderhorn Recreation Center. The city will accept feedback through an online survey until March 21st.
If you've been waiting to apply for disability benefits, don't. Hi, I'm Sarah, and I'm a lawyer at Adams.
Crazy. So, again, what's going on in George Floyd Square will continue to go on. I'm not sure. I don't even care at this point anymore, because in my eyes, it's never going to be about what the people want anyways. It's about what certain people want. And people have already I won't myself drive through there because it's not the same for me. And it's not, for some people it might be, and some people, they don't care. For me, it's different. It means something for myself. I've seen the video. I'm not saying that I believe it was years of ignoring the actual problem that was going on. And that's why it means so much to me. Not that, Derek Chauvin killed George Floyd, but in my eyes, Minneapolis Police Department killed George Floyd. I'm not going to just put that on, one officer. What I do put on Derek is John Pope, Zoe Code, Jennifer Day. You know what I'm saying? Because those were, people could have prevented those. I think about John Pope. There was other officers there that could have did something. I think about Zoe Cole, the same thing. There was other officers. And then even with Miss Day, there was other officers. And then they allowed this to go on. So in my eyes, I just don't see as, it being a Derek Chauvin issue. I see it being as more as a Minneapolis police policy issue, and that we need to fix, right? So I want to get into, there will be a special election tomorrow that people, I feel, need to pay attention to. And it potentially could, a lot of things could happen. And I just want to get into that, right? Because I don't really believe that people understand the balance of power that's at play. Even though it is just a house and you still need a governor and you still need a Senate. But it does put more pressure on the Senate and the governor if you have a house that has power.
All right, well, in less than 36 hours, voters in Roseville and Shoreview will be heading to the polls in an election that will decide the balance of power in the House. It comes after DFL candidate Curtis Johnson won this seat, but a judge said that he couldn't be seated because he didn't live in the district. Heidi Wigdahl has a preview of the special election.
For the residents of District 40B in Roseville and Shoreview, the wait is nearly over.
It almost feels surreal that it's here upon us.
David Gottfried is the DFL-endorsed candidate, facing off against Republican Paul Wickstrom.
Feels like it's gone by really fast and really slow at the same time.
Both Wickstrom and Gottfried have spent the past couple months door-knocking daily.
Since the inauguration, people really have been viewing this race in the national context. And that has been coming up at the doors every day and highlighting the importance of restoring a tie within the state house.
A win for Gottfried would bring the House back to a tie. He's also interested in more bipartisan legislation.
I think we have avenues to increase supports for mental health. And I think there's also potentially bipartisan support for trying to lower the cost of prescriptions within our state as well.
And for me, this whole race is a metaphor on the fraud and the mismanaged spending in the state.
If elected, Wickstrom says his top priority is making Minnesota more affordable for its residents.
We really have to push forward some important changes, not just for fraud detection and prevention, but also to bring down the spending. And I think, if we identify the areas where the fraud is happening, we can redirect those dollars to those areas where the crucial services are needed.
Back in November, Democrat Johnson beat Republican Wickstrom by 30 percentage points.
Right.
Early voting in person continues tomorrow at the Ramsey County Plato Building, and then Tuesday is special election day. Polls will be open 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Morgan.
See this? This is a 400-ounce bar of...
And in my eyes, in my mind, are people going to pay attention to what's going on? Are we going to have a power sharing agreement? Are we going to have politicians that, will it be 67-67 or will it be 68-66? 40 in that district has been predominantly Democratic. And will that change with everything that's going on with waste, everything that's going on with fraud? But then we see everything that's going on with Trump. And is that going to affect on the scale? Is that going to be enough to maybe what is going on in Minnesota put a dent in the fraud and waste? I'm not sure. I do know that a lot of people are anxious to see is this is the one thing that I look at, right? This is the one, because there was more money put into these campaigns than there was during Curtis and Paul did originally. So I really want to see if it makes a difference. I know that Paul it's been over $100,000 that Paul's gotten. So I want to see if that money, and they've been out door knocking. They've been out like crazy. So I want to see if that results. I want to see if that can actually make a difference. The way they have mobilized in that race, when it came to House Republicans that were seated. I've seen Pam Altendorf on there. I've seen Walter Hudson. I've seen some, some high-ranking individuals be out there. And in my eyes, how much does that help? We don't know. We won't know until tomorrow when the polls close. So I would garner people to pay attention. I would ask people to understand that there's something is going on and potentially could be, affect you. That's one thing that I will, definitely keep on saying is that just because something doesn't affect you now doesn't mean that it's not going to affect you down the road. Is it going to affect you in ways that's going to hurt your family? Is it going to be in ways that is going to affect how you do things in your world? You know what I'm saying? Is your bubble going to pop? So I want to get into what happened in Bemidji, right? Beltrami County. Everybody maybe knows this story. Maybe you don't. Hardell Sherrill. We all know that Med, the insurance company, and the medical group weren't out there doing their jobs. They cared more about profits and not people. And finally, the nurse is being charged with manslaughter. And I'm glad about that, because even though, a justice delayed is a justice denied. But in my eyes, it's, year 2024 was the year of the truth. And year 2025 is the year of retribution. But some people look at, it's revenge. No, it's not. It's that the system has allowed for so much to be covered up. You have to pay for your sins. For us to equal out and to regain, to make America great again, you have to cause out, because it's been out there. The truth has been out there to expose into the light. So now that it came out of the dark, we have to see some kind of accountability. We have to see some kind of justice, or we're not even going to get there. So with that being said, listen to this story about Hardell Sherrill.
Ever they get as a sentence, it's not there's no comparison to the sentence I got. I got a life sentence. My baby is gone.
Well, that's new reaction tonight to a story that we've been following here for the past 7 years. There's now new charges in the 2018 death of an inmate at the Beltrami County Jail. The former director of nursing for that facility, Michelle Skrock, has now been charged with 1 count of second-degree manslaughter and 2 counts of criminal neglect. Now, Hardell Sherrill died less than a week after arriving to the Beltrami County Jail. Video from inside his cell captured Sherrill's suffering during a 2-day span. Now, jail staff at the time believed he was faking his symptoms. Well, today's criminal complaint, filed by Attorney General Keith Ellison, claims that Skrock failed to properly care for Sherrill while he was in custody. The complaint alleges she did not take Sherrill's vitals for 2 days after he had returned from the emergency room. His mother, Delshea Perry, talked to us after hearing the news tonight.
I'm grateful for the fact that this is moving things in the right direction. And as I said before, it's been long coming, but it gives me hope that people in the future will be held accountable, and that this kind of thing won't just be brushed under the rug and families forgotten about. So yes, I'm just going to continue to pray that changes with the Hardell Sherrill Act and the law that we passed back in 2021 will really be enforced by the Department of Corrections, and that no one else
That's a dime.
No one else has to go through
Right.
what we have gone
That's
through.
what this is about, preventing.
Now, Cheryl's family, along with the county and care provider, all settled a lawsuit for $2.6 million back in 2023. But today's development marks the first criminal charges filed in Cheryl's death, and we'll be following all the developments for you.
Assalamu alaikum. Thinking about starting a
Assalamu
business?
alaikum.
Don't, because starting a business is a
Oh, shit. Whoops. Did too much. But to be honest, it is time that, people started to pay, because we've seen so much accountability when it comes to financial justice. But what are we seeing when it comes to accountability? What are we seeing that is justice? And not what it looks like in a politician's eyes, but what does it look like in our eyes? Because it's more than just a payment. It's more than just legislation, but it's actually getting accountability and responsibility. And I hopefully that, with the fact that she's been charged, there may be something to come out of it. Because I remember, we went up to Bemidji, me and Ashley did, for, some protest. And I remember we made a couple of things. We made Miss Perry a box, because we did Locks for Love. And we ended up finding one day when the police cut the locks, we ended up finding Hardell's. Damn, right. Right. The nurses did not. It's crazy. A lot's going to go down with that, and people got to pay attention. But when it came down to Hardell, we did something very special and we will never forget that. Miss Perry, she always has a special place in my heart. Even when it came to Miss Amity, Miss Domick, Kobe Heisler's mom, or Dante Wright's, they will always, no matter what, I'm saying? I don't get into personal involvements. That's your business. That ain't mine. So when it came to, I understand, and I want to speak about this, and I'm going to speak about this near the end, is if people aren't paying attention what's going on in Brooklyn Center, this is why I'm conflicted. And, but I want to speak about, something else, because I do remember Hardell, and I do remember going up to Bemidji and protesting for him. And a lot of people don't remember that they have that statues, Blue Ox and Paul Bunyan out there, the statues. But it's really beautiful, and the fact that we were up there for Hardell, and the fact that we were up there for a difference, and hopefully that we're starting to see that difference. So I want to get into, again, is that Minnesota lawmakers are considering a change to the use of force law. And what does that mean for us citizens? What does that mean for our safety, that we won't be killed by police? And I actually believes that it makes it easier for them to do harm to us.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us. I'm Kirsten Swanson.
And I'm Brett Hoffland. There's a push at the Capitol to make use of deadly force laws more clear.
Lawmakers who support a new bill say the language laid out in this proposal better protects the public and officers. Jay Coles joins us to explain what they want to change, Jay.
Yeah, Kirsten, the Minnesota Police and Peace Officers Association says it's a simple change in the current law's language. And the proposed amendment to change the deadly use of force law comes down to one additional word. It's moments like these.
Sheriff's office, come to the door now.
A felony suspect in that house unexpectedly opens fire on Hennepin County Sheriff's deputies last year.
Show me your
Law enforcement says the body-worn camera illustrates how quickly officers sometimes have to react with force. And the current deadly use of force law reads like this, quote, that such force is necessary to protect the peace officer or another from death or great bodily harm. Imran Ali with the Minnesota Police and Peace Officers
I can't stand that
Association
bitch ass nigga.
told lawmakers last week that language does not take into account split-second decisions.
In other words, law enforcement had to be practically certain of
It should be
death or
fucking
great
certain.
bodily
It shouldn't
harm
be no
before using
guessing.
deadly force.
Ali says the new proposal would change the law with the addition of one word,
Apparent.
and it would read, quote, to protect
Words
the peace
matter.
officer or another from apparent death or
Words
great
matter.
bodily harm. Burnsville Sergeant Brent Murray told lawmakers he faced a split-second decision in 2021 and supports the change.
What next? Could we lose our freedom, livelihood, homes, and further impact our families?
Some lawmakers expressed concern it could modify or change the legal standard for deadly force.
If it's not to change the standard at all, I guess I get concerned that when we add words, courts are going to believe that, in fact, we intend to make some sort of change. That's why the legislature does things, and I think that makes me quite nervous.
And takes a step backward from negotiated police reforms.
One thing that's unique to Minnesota is what happened to George Floyd and the death of George Floyd.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of negotiation that came out of it, and it resulted in some language changes that I gather have worked quite well.
Now, after spirited exchanges, the House Public Safety Committee did not take a vote up or down on the bill. It's now been laid over, meaning members want clarification on the possible legal ramifications before taking a deciding vote sometime later in the session. Jay Coles, Eyewitness.
And that's the whole thing of it is. I think it is going to come down to a vote, but they're going to see how this goes tomorrow. You know what I'm saying? They're going to see how this election goes tomorrow, and that's insane to me, because people got to pay attention. And there's a lot going on at the state capitol. A lot going on at the state capitol, right? What I want to get into next is a little bit about Brooklyn Center. They're asking for help, for people to come, because they are trying to repeal the Dante Wright and Kobe Heisler Community Safety Community Act, right? So Lori put out this March 7th at 9 o'clock in the morning, community support needed in Brooklyn Center. There are several topics of concern on the agenda for the next city council meeting being held on Monday, March 10th. That's today. Certain council members are seeking to repeal the tenets of the Dante Wright and Kobe Heisler Community Safety Community Act. I don't know why the safety's in there twice. By stalling and dismantling the initiatives which community and elected officials worked hard to make transformative change. In addition, they are looking to dismiss city leaders who have been instrumental in this work. I knew this, this is the thing that hurts me about this movement. Because you can spotlight shit all day, but until it actually affects the person, nobody really pays attention, right? Nobody cares what is going on in communities, around them. And honestly, I believe that, if this is my thing of it is, right? And I'm not saying that don't go help them, because I stand all day behind Dante Wright. I'm all day long live Dante Wright. There's nothing in my bone and body. I wear the bracelet, you know what I'm saying? Justice for Dante Wright. And it's fuck the police. I'm on probation right now. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, to see all this go on, and I literally had to, I don't want to turn this into an all pity Chaz, the worst has happened to you. No, it's not about that. It's that people have stood up for change by any means necessary. And we're seeing that things like this that Brooklyn Center City Council is doing is trying to take it away from the community. And that's change. And that's wild to me, is because I remember when all this was going on and Mayor Elliott, we tried to do a whole strong mayor thing on Brooklyn Center. And the people, it was niggas. It was niggas. That's the one crazy thing. It was niggas. The same people that don't want this, that want a spotlight? Where the fuck were they at when people were out here begging if y'all want to make change, let's make it. Don't fake it. Because niggas was pointing out that Reggie Edwards was a part of the problem, that April Graves, that what happened to Katie Wright, Dan Lindstrom, what happened to the city council member that worked on the police department. You know what I'm saying? Or the fact that the police union in Brooklyn Center hired Katie Wright, or not Katie Wright, Kim Potter. They hired the same dude that I just showed earlier for MPPOA, right? Imam, whatever, Ali, the fucking lawyer dude, stood up for Kim. Stood up. He quit. That's what people don't understand is there's a lot behind this. And I will tell you this because trying to think now. So one of the times that I went viral, there was an instance where a Stillwater correctional officer and his wife were drunk. And they started saying nigger this, nigger that. It was caught on Fox 9 and, all this crazy ass shit. But it's like, when are we going to get changed? Because, he lost his job. You know what I'm saying? People in Stillwater didn't have to deal with that anymore. And it wasn't his first time. That's the one crazy thing is like so many stories that I see on like TikTok or like even, I woke up this morning and a fucking plane crashed in Rochester by the airport. He lived, thank God. Just like yesterday out in Lancaster, that was crazy as hell, right? Because at 3:00 yesterday, their time, they had, or maybe it was about 2 or whatever, they had a plane crash where 5 people were involved in that. And then you had one out in Rochester by the golf course in the airport. And it's like, damn, so much is going on and people are like, in my eyes, we're not paid to pay attention. We're not paid to be informed. We're paid to be workers, not thinkers. We're not paid to think about how to better the world. We're paid to better a company, to better their profits. That's the one crazy part that I will never understand. I will never understand. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I don't get it. I don't get it. There's so much going on. You got a government shutdown coming, both statewide and federal. You don't hear people talking about that. You don't hear people talking about this spending bill that could be a gap until September for the feds, for federal spending. You don't hear about that. You don't hear about the crisis that's going on in the state capitol because they don't want you to be informed. They don't want you to be better for not only you, but for everybody. Because once you know better, you do better. And so if they block people from knowing better, how the fuck are we supposed to do better? That's the one thing I will never understand. And I want people to think about in your mind is how do you get the government to pay attention and to start knowing better so we can do better as people? Now, I don't understand that. Why is that? Why does that seem like such a hard logic to get of like doing better so that we get along? Is that hard? That's what's crazy to me. Is it like, is it so fucked up where like you are not getting, food stamps or you're not getting help from, the county and you're afraid that you should have been paying attention. Because I will tell you like this, when everybody was out twerking and we should have been educating. We should have been having groups of, okay, just like when I had Michelle Gross, Amity, and Tashira come down to Red Wing and to do a group on how to educate people on their rights. On their rights. Right. They don't want to talk about that though. You know what I'm saying? They don't want to talk about that because that's a conspiracy theory in their eyes. That's a whole, oh, that's a made up. That's not true. That's not true. It is true. If you looked in history, and it's all there. That's the one crazy thing, because I will tell you like this. I get into arguments all the time about, 990 forms and, what nonprofits should be doing and what they shouldn't be doing. And it's like, hey, listen, I got questions. When I see on your 990 that you get all these grants and donations, but yet majority goes to pay your salaries, I got questions. Because you're always asking for money. So is that to pay your salary? That's the kind of questions I have. And then you look at their travel, their occupancy, their miscellaneous, and a lot of people don't have receipts. Because we got loopholes on top of loopholes on top of loopholes for niggas to get away with it. For niggas to get away with it. And then you look at through history, you see like what went on in Jordan, Minnesota. You see what went on in Princeton, Minnesota, what went on in Minneapolis with the police. So why is it so hard to believe that your taxpayer dollars are used to railroad people, innocent people, because they don't know any better? They don't know any better. But I guarantee this, if you educated individuals, they would make a difference. They wouldn't just be following blind people. They wouldn't be following blind leaders. So, man, we had a hell of an episode today. I talked about, buried truths and broken promises, scandals, delays, and the fight for justice. Because that's something every day is a fight for justice. It's a fight for justice. What's going on in Rochester today at the city council meeting? They're talking about homelessness. There's so much going on today. It's fucking ridiculous. When it comes to these meetings and committee hearings, right now, you have the Fraud and Oversight Policy Committee hearing. Well, Ms. Robbins, she leads it. You had Ways and Means earlier, happened at 8:15. And then you have a legislative session at 3:30. But you have committee hearings all day. And then you got city councils tonight. You have some school boards. People got to get involved. You have to. If you think you're going to just be a difference maker by just standing on the sidelines, that's not how the game's played. That's not how it's played. You pick up a ball and you put it in the basket, or you put it in the hoop, or you put it in the nets. Doesn't matter if it's a field goal with a football, or a three-pointer with a basketball, or a goal with a soccer ball, or a home run with a baseball. Get in the game. Because it matters. It matters. It matters. It matters. It matters. You know what I'm saying? So with that being said, man, I want y'all to have a great Monday. I want y'all to rejoice in it. Watch these committee hearings that are going on. If you live in Rochester, get involved with the homelessness. Get involved. It's not hard. It's not hard. It's not hard, man. It's not hard. But we got to get people to be involved. It just doesn't happen overnight. Change doesn't. It happens when we organize, when we strategize, and we unify together. When we have one mission, not all these political agendas, but we have one mission and we have one goal, and that is to better our neighborhood. That is to better our communities. So with that being said, I want people to win or fail, freedom or jail, heaven or hell. Wish me well, and I'll be back same time, same place tomorrow, and I'll see y'all later.
Look at you, look at you, oh, look at you. Baby, look at you, look at you. need a drink. Wanna put you in your place right here, right now. So let's slow it down and relax and get closer. Then I'll take it out, let you taste your composure. Know what you doing, take a seat and I fold her. Pretty brown eyes, you got it sold up. Ooh, I just love it. Look at you.